Well, the NFL draft kicked off from Vegas on Thursday night. The Broncos, of course, had given up their first-round pick for starting quarterback Russell Wilson. Not too bad. So Denver didn't have a pick until the second round Friday night. CBS 4's Michael Spencer joining us now from the Pat Bowlen Fieldhouse over at Broncos HQ. You know, let's talk about that 64th pick. New linebacker coming to the Mile High City. And, you know, Michael, you talk to some people who cover the Big 12. They say this kid was the best defensive player in the conference.
Yeah, there was a lot of guys who had him as maybe a top 5 edge rusher. He's going to play outside linebacker. Nik Bonitto from Oklahoma. He's a guy who last year for the Sooners had 15 tackles for loss and 7 sacks.
Does it impact, since you've got a couple of guys as bookends, does it impact on how they try to defend against Bradley Chubb?
Well, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think Nik Bonitto feels like he can come in and maybe give Bradley Chubb a run for his money. Now, in an ideal world, Bradley Chubb stays healthy. He's good to go. Randy Gregory stays healthy. Their big offseason signing. He's good to go. And then you add Nik Bonitto into that mix along with a guy like Malik Reed, and you've got some really good pass rushers, maybe 1 through 4 there. But the question is, can Bradley Chubb stay healthy? And he's on the last year of his rookie deal. The Broncos have picked up his option, but they have not signed an extension for Bradley Chubb. So I think this is a signing that puts a little bit of pressure on Bradley Chubb. Hey, can you stay healthy? Can you be the guy that we thought you were going to be when we selected you 5th overall a couple years ago? So this, to me, is a big sign to Bradley Chubb. Hey, we got a guy who could potentially replace you in the long run if you can't stay healthy and if you can't produce like we feel like you can produce.
And so, Michael, of course, Noah Fant left the building. We know there was that opportunity to get something done as they traded down from 75th, 5 spots, and we've got a tight end from the West Coast.
Yeah, Greg Dulcich coming in from UCLA. And, of course, we've talked a lot on these programs and on these airwaves about Trey McBride, the star tight end from CSU. He was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. He won the Mackey Award. Dulcich was a Mackey Award semifinalist, so he was one of the top 3 tight ends in the country last year at UCLA. And he is a guy who comes in and he's ready to go. He was so pumped up on his phone call, Jim. They asked him, what do you think about playing with Russell Wilson? He said, it's going to be great. I can't wait to get there and win Super Bowls, right? So that's the standard for the rookie coming in right now. I like this pick. We knew that tight end was a spot where the Broncos needed to do something, and now they go out and they get a guy in Dulcich who actually started his career at UCLA as a wide receiver, then transitioned to tight end. He was asked on the phone call, hey, how do you feel about blocking? And he said, I love it. I love going in there and getting dirty. The Broncos need a guy who can block. Obviously, they have Albert Okwuegbunam at tight end, but they've been missing a guy who can block. Dulcich feels like he can maybe bring that to this tight end room, and he's a guy, I think he feels like he has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. He feels like he should have been the first tight end taken off the board. No offense to Trey McBride and CSU and your Rams there, but he's a guy who comes in and expects to make an impact on this team right away. And if you're the Broncos, you've got an offensive head coach in Nathaniel Hackett who can draw up all sorts of stuff. You know you're good at the wide receiver spot, and now you just added another weapon for Russell Wilson to add to his arsenal once the Broncos start this season.
And, you know, Michael, speaking of Dulcich, I think both he and George Payton share an alma mater, don't they?
They certainly
UCLA.
do. There's a UCLA connection there. Yeah. George Payton, obviously a UCLA guy, so there was a connection there. And Dulcich said that Payton was actually roommates with his high school coach back in the day. So obviously a very tight connection. He said he had really, really good visits with the Broncos and was really looking forward to getting here. And I think the UCLA connection certainly helped. If you're a GM, you want to get guys that you know. You want to get guys that you feel like can produce, obviously, on the football field. But you're worried about their background, too, because you're investing a lot in these young men. And so I think that certainly helped with George Payton's decision-making in terms of selecting Greg Dulcich.
You know, and Michael, finally, I know that the Broncos have so many of these lower-round draft picks. They might trade 1 or 2, but how many picks do they have left at this point?
Right now, I'm doing the math in my head. They have 7 selections. Actually, no, make it 8. They've still got 1 left on Friday, and then they picked up another pick in the 5th round, I believe it was, due to their trade when they traded back in the 3rd round. So they've still got a ton of selections, Jim. I would expect them to try and offload some of those selections for picks for next year. Remember, they only have 4 picks for next year, and George Paton absolutely loves draft picks. So I don't think they're done in terms of making trades. We'll see if they hang on to their late 3rd round pick and do indeed make a selection there. I still think they're going to look at offensive linemen, and I still think they're going to look at corner as this draft progresses, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some more trades moving forward.
All right, Michael, as always, thanks for the great insights from Bronco-ville, and we'll look forward to more information on all the Broncos picks just by heading over to CBSDenver.com.